So there are some forms, there are some speech units that when articulated, there is voicing. So those ones are referred to as voiced. So whenever you say a speech sound and you feel a vibration here in your Adam's apple, if you're a guy, if you feel a vibration here, that means the sound that you're producing, that means it's a voiced sound. But then if you are saying a particular sound, maybe if you are saying this sound, if you say this sound and you touch yourself here and you don't feel any vibrations, that means that that sound is actually voiceless. It doesn't have a voice. So yeah, so we have voice sound and voiceless sounds in speech. In speech, in human speeches. Okay, so a plosive sound, it's a sound that is, when it's produced, it almost sounds like like the word plosive. So if you hear the word plosive, think of something that is explosive or an explosion. So there's a kind of sound that when produced, it almost sounds like there's an explosion within the oral text when those sounds are produced. And so importantly, this might get a little bit confusing. I'd just like to say that there's another name for a plosive sound in phonetics. Another, the phonemes or the speech units that are sometimes referred to as, that are called plosive, they are called stops as well. So within the IPA chart, sometimes you might see the word stop as a description of the manner of articulation. So stop and plosive, that's basically the same thing. So basically in articulatory phonetics, stop is a synonym of plosive, and of course vice versa. So if a consonant is referred to as a stop, that means it's a plosive consonant. So a plosive consonant, it's a consonant that, when it's produced, like the sound, for instance, that sound is referred to as a plosive because again, it sounds like an explosion. And then the b sound as well, that is also considered to be a plosive sound or a stop. And then the d sound, the d, and then the d and the d, and ga. All of those sounds are considered to be plosive sound. The nasal sounds are the sounds that are produced within the nasal cavity, or sounds produced through the nose or through the nostrils. Those are the nasal sounds. And then the trill sound is a sound like rrr, for instance, like this sound. So this would be a rrr sound. That's a trill. And then this would be a brrr sound. Okay. So a trill sound is a sound that has that repetitive sound, that sound in it. A tap or a flap, this is a kind of sounds that you would normally found in American accent normally. So in a sound like, in a word like butter, for instance. So sometimes in the US, they wouldn't say butter, but they would say butter. So the r sound is it's labeled as a tap or a flat because the tongue actually taps when the d sound in butter, when the d sound in butter is articulated, it sort of taps within the alveolar. Okay. It kind of like taps the alveolar when the sound is articulated. The fricative sound. So the fricatives are always spoken about in relation to the affricates or to the approximants. Okay, so fricative and approximant. Okay, importantly, another word for an approximant consonant is an affricate. So if they are speaking about an affricate in phonetics, they are basically speaking about an approximant. So fricatives are always understood better in relation to affricates or in relation to the approximants, and vice versa. So fricatives are the kind of consonants that when they are produced, there's a relatively broader rush of air through the oral cavity. Okay, so in comparison to the approximant, in the articulation of the consonant that are referred to as approximants, when we articulate the approximants, the air is relatively more constricted than in the articulation of the fricatives. So, for instance, the sh sound that will be considered as a fricative sound because there's a bigger rush of air through the oral tract. But then the ch sound, that sound will be considered as an affricate or as an approximant, because in the articulation of that sound, the air is relatively more constricted. So again, you would have, for the affricates, maybe you'd have the sound, okay? So that's an aspirate, that is a fricative sound because there's more air that's coming out. And then you'd have the v sound. Yeah, okay. So yes, so normally the fricatives are always spoken about in relation to the approximant. Lateral fricatives, those are the kind of consonants that are lateral, that sort of produce at the side of the tongue or at the side of the oral tract. Lateral fricatives will be sounds like, for instance, or sound. So in the articulation of those sounds, they are primarily articulated at the side of the oral tract. So at the space between the tongue, the side of the tongue, and the cheek, and the side of the cheek. Okay, so those are the lateral lateral fricatives. Examples of lateral fricatives would include the sound and maybe also the sound. And those are the sounds that are found in the isiZulu language. And then the lateral approximants, again, there will be the sounds produced at the side of the mouth, but the air there will be more constricted. So for instance, the sound, so you have the sound versus the sound. So the sound would be the lateral approximant, right? Okay, and then this chart is also very important. Again, if you read articles on phonetics, you're gonna see this chart. You're gonna see the IPA chart. You're gonna see the vowel trapezium, and then you're also gonna see this chart, which can be labeled as, which is called the non-pulmonic, the chart for the non-pulmonic consonants. So now, again, in that article that is on Moodle, that is posted on Moodle, the article on articulatory phonetics, it has this chart as well. It has the IPA chart, it has the vowel trapezium chart, it also has this chart. So now, say this is very important. So as you're gonna see when we look at that article on articulatory phonetics, in articulation, there's a type of articulation that is referred to as ingressive. And there's another type of articulation that is referred to as egressive, for instance. You're gonna see it in that article. I think it is defined in the article that you're going to look at. So the most common type of articulation is the egressive one. So that is to say, so normally when people are speaking, like in the English language, I think all the speech sounds are egressive, okay? So in most languages of the world, the sounds, when people speak the languages, for the most languages, the sounds, the manner of speaking, or rather the S-stream mechanism is that of an egressive one. So that is to say, when people speak, they sort of exhale, so to speak, in a manner of speaking. They sort of exhale. Yeah, they sort of exhale. And there's a common type of the airstream mechanism when people are speaking. They sort of breathe out or exhale. There's another one which is referred to as an ingressive type, which is perhaps not very common in most languages of the world. But however, the ingressive airstream mechanism, the ingressive one, is actually very common in the Zulu language. Okay, so the ingressive airstream mechanism. So what type of airstream mechanism is that? So the ingressive airstream mechanism, that's when people are speaking, that when they produce a particular speech sound, they do not necessarily exhale. It's almost as if they sort of breathe in when they articulate that particular sound. So that is the ingressive airstream mechanism, when people sort of almost breathe in when they articulate a particular speech sound. In articulatory phonetics, therefore, we separate between the pulmonic consonants and the so-called non-pulmonic consonants.